Welcome to the Gal's Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Rebecca, and it's Black History Month at Gal's Guide. I'm joined by Bonnie, Kim, and Eden talking about our one cool thing about Black History Month. Bonnie already talked about Kara Walker, but before we dive back in, let's get to know something random about our gal pals. So I am going to ask everybody, and then I'll answer at the end or at the beginning or however we end up working it out. What is a travel destination featuring Black history that you would recommend or that you would like to visit? And if everyone needs time, I can answer.
It looks like Eden has her place already. She's like, oh, I'm going to go.
Okay, so
go ahead.
I love everything French, which is why I married a French guy. But I've always wanted to visit New Orleans,
Ooh, yeah.
all of it, including the French Quarter. I find that New Orleans, I think Louisiana history is incredibly fascinating. And New Orleans specifically is very fascinating. There was a time before the Civil War when people of African descent outnumbered people of European descent. Like, I don't know, 3 out of 4 people were of African descent. So you know, they like 3 to 1 kind of thing. And I find that really fascinating because most of them were not servants. They were not slaves. They were free people. Most of them had moved to Louisiana from Haiti. So I just find everything about New Orleans really, really fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Bonnie, do you have a place in mind?
Oh, I have 3.
Oh, go for it.
I really want to visit the new the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C., and the lynching memorial, and part of, I can never remember if it's Monticello or Monticello. They've made for Sally, her part of the tour is now mandatory. And I just read an article, but they were pretty much suggesting that Sally become the first lady because Thomas Jefferson's wife had died like 10 years before he was even president. And she fathered several of his kids while he was president. So
that would make sense.
She should count as first lady.
Absolutely. Well, I had that in mind, actually, the African American History Museum. Yeah. But something that I was looking up, the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum sounds very fascinating. I've never been to Mississippi also, but it's a civil rights museum, and it explores how Mississippi often served as a prime organizing ground for the movements in 1960s. So it was showing, I was looking at pictures on that. It has one picture where there's just a line of white soldiers or white guys with helmets on, I don't know, soldiers, but, and just a row of people with signs that say, I am a man. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, I think it would be really interesting. And one of the quotes, it says, "We are shying away from nothing. Understand where we are today is shaped in every way by where we have come from our past." And so, yeah. I
would just kind of piggyback on those. I mean, all those sound amazing. And when Eden started talking about New Orleans, I thought she was going to So my first choice would be Paris, because a lot of African Americans went to Paris in the, I guess, first half, maybe even later than that, but especially in the first half of the 20th century, to just kind of get away from racism, considering that there were certain clubs where even though the performers were African American, the only people who could watch them were white people, which is obviously problematic. And so that was something that I found interesting when I was in Paris several years ago. I went to a few jazz clubs, and I wanted to, even while I was there more for the music, but I wanted to learn more about the history. And I just looking up online a few minutes ago, there's a lot of tours available for specific to African American or Black history in Paris, and then all the other places you all mentioned. Like the African American History Museum in D.C. Sounds amazing, even though I think it's like sold out every day. So I think it's a little tough to get tickets, but
that's great.
Or at least it was when they first opened. And then I knew a lot of people were trying to go there during the the government shut down, because it's one of the museums that is, I believe it's free, but the government needs to be open for it to be open. So sadly, a lot of like school trips were going around that time and we're missing out. But yeah, if I'm ever back in DC, that's definitely on the top of my list too. So, so I believe it's my turn to talk about my one cool thing. And I'm going to kind of keep it short and sweet because I think it's someone a lot of people already know, but I'm going to talk about Nina Simone. And I wanted to start with, obviously she's an amazing singer. She was just sworn into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in 2018. So she's, it looks like that was the first time she was nominated, which is surprising because she's been eligible for a long time. She's known for songs like Mississippi Goddamn and For Women, which are about civil rights era things. Mississippi Goddamn about an assassination of a civil rights leader, and For Women about the 4 girls in the Birmingham bombing at the church. And but she also sang a lot of other songs, like she sang a song that the Bee Gees wrote for her. Like she's definitely has a range of jazz and other types of music. And the way I first found out about her, which is maybe kind of going to sound weird, but it's also another reason why we need to focus more, like we're talking about in our last podcast about women of history and all our other podcasts that we talk about women of history for Gal's Guide, is that I knew of her, but the first time I actually heard her music was, strangely enough, when I was working in a Borders about 11 years ago, and they were playing her CD remixed and reimagined, which I definitely recommend to anybody that likes her music. And I don't know, it was probably pretty popular then, but like I said, it was maybe 2006 it was released. And it was playing on it was just like the featured CD that somebody put in or whatever. And so I bought it, and then I listened to it over and over and over again. And then I wanted to get, learn more about her and she comes up too in a lot of civil rights history because of her involvement with that, which I guess a lot of singers and artists were involved with that. But I think that also kind of gets forgotten over time, that it's not, they're not just known for their songs that people know them for. It's also, she was also an activist. So, but there's also a really good documentary about her that I would recommend called What Happened, Miss Simone. It's on, we recently, earlier this month, posted a list on our website that has Bonnie selected several recommended readings and a couple documentaries. So that's one of the documentaries that we included was about her.
Oh, awesome!
And just like so a little bit more about her. So I just kind of gave like the big picture, I guess, view. She was born in 1933 in North Carolina. She was a musical prodigy on piano, and she went to Juilliard. So she was, I guess, not really self-taught. Like that was something, I guess, I don't know why that surprised me about her, but I just found that really fascinating that she could have been like a classical, like she could have just probably been okay as being classical pianist, except for, this little thing called racism, and it's harder to get jobs in the 50s if you're not white. So, so maybe if there was a Nina Simone born, she would have been a very famous classical pianist, and maybe that's all it would have been. Because it looks like she was even denied for certain schools because of her race.
Oh wow!
And she and at the time it was hard for her to find just places that she'd be accepted. So she worked in Atlantic City clubs in the 50s, and she took on the name. She wasn't born Nina Simone. That's her stage name that she took on while she was playing in clubs, and it was derived from it was like a nickname that her then boyfriend called her. So, and Simone was inspired by a French actress. So she sang like "I Loves You, Porgy" from Porgy and Bess, which probably a lot of people, at least at that time, knew. I don't know how many people was recording, but that's one I know. And then she also had a lot of popular songs. She did Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are Changing," the Beatles' "Here Comes the Sun." "Here Comes the Sun" is one of the songs that's remixed on the CD I was mentioning earlier. And then she did a lot of covers, but she always would put her own spin on them. So that, wasn't exactly the same. And as I mentioned earlier, too, she did Mississippi Goddamn in response to the 1963 assassination of Medgar Evers. She did a lot of other songs that I'm sure at the time were considered somewhat controversial, because I'm guessing even then, like on the radio, they wouldn't want a song that says "goddamn" in it. But you do what you got to do, I guess. Let's see. And she lived all over the world. She lived in Liberia, Switzerland, England, and Barbados, and eventually settled in the south of France. So some of her story also reminds me of Josephine Baker, who's someone that we've talked about on Gal's Guide before, as another woman who was, involved in the civil rights movement, but was also known as probably an entertainer first, and then later or second as an activist, unless people already knew, unless they knew her as the activist first, I guess. But for the most part, she's known as an entertainer. Josephine Baker, and both of them spent time in France, and both of them had similar backgrounds as far as struggles they'd overcome, but they were just different times in history. So yeah, that's all I've got. I mean, she's obviously someone, like, it's worth, anyone that wants to know more about her, she's worth doing a Google search, searching for her music. If anyone hears this and isn't familiar, she's amazing. And that documentary, What Happened to Simone, is also really good. There was even controversy. There was a biopic about her. I guess it did eventually come out, but it was pretty controversial because of the skin tone of the actress that was going to play her. Like, they didn't choose an actress with the same skin tone, and I don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on with that. So I guess it had a very limited release. I haven't seen it. I've only seen the documentary of her. But anyway, has anyone anyone have any thoughts about Nina Simone?
Actually, I happen to know one of her nephews.
Oh, wow.
Oh. I knew him.
So did I get it right?
Well, the interesting thing, I met him through, because I'm an actor as well. Mm-hmm. And at the time he was an actor. And he was married to a ballerina. But anyway, when I asked him about growing up in the same family as Nina Simone, he said, I never really knew that really much about her, because apparently her family, the main members of her family, were very opposed to her lifestyle and her music. I'm not sure if they were really, really religious or just very conservative or whatever, but she was really very much the black sheep of her family. And so she was really she left home kind of early. She didn't return home very often. So he, his name is Jonathan. He basically said, he didn't really grow up knowing very much about her, other than the fact that she'd been kind of shunned from the family. And he grew up not really understanding what that was about. Plus not understanding why a family would shun a member, right, of its own. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until he was an adult, and I met him as an adult, it wasn't until he was an adult that he realized, who she really was and what she really was up to. And he really continued to be surprised when people found out that he was her nephew. They seemed to always know more about her than he did. And so, here I am going, oh my God, can I touch you? And he's like, well, sure, like, whatever. He took it all in stride. But, it's just really fascinating, because I understand that whole thing about not totally getting, what's up with a family member until you're grown and you go, oh, I get it.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually reading about her while you were talking, and it said one of the reasons she changed her name was to disguise herself from her family members, because she chose to play the devil's music or the cocktail piano at the nightclub. So she was told by the nightclub that she had to sing to her own accompaniment because they weren't going to do it, and that helped launch her jazz vocalist career.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of like the bad things in life kind of help you reach those, like the struggles, can help reach the things that just really help you take off. My little 2 cents of sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely had a lot of adversity that she needed to overcome, and yeah, like I couldn't even scratch the surface in like a 10-minute thing. Like that's why I was trying to kind of keep it short, but again, that documentary goes into it. It goes into some of her, I guess we'll say, like issues later in life, and was she creative maybe because of things she had to overcome, or would she have been creative without those challenges, or would it have been, would it have been the same artist that we all know today in 2019, but for some of the things, like I said, like she was like an amazing concert piano player, but the opportunities just weren't there for her at that time, which is unfortunate. But again, maybe we wouldn't have even known about her unless we were really into classical piano music or something like that.
Oh, yeah. It's nice that she had a lot of different facets that she was interested in, so that so many different people from different interests would get to know her in a different way, and then find out more about her and realize how complex and talented she was. Mm-hmm. Did you meet him before or after she passed? Like 2003, I think is when it said she passed. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Mm-hmm. It may have been after she passed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was. Now, I do remember, and this was definitely after she passed, there was a African-American actress who graduated from Butler around that same time. And she wrote a play. It was hysterical. It was a 2-woman play. They kind of played multiple characters, but it basically took place in a beauty shop. And so it was all kind of centered around hair and the Black female culture. But the through line was they kept listening to the radio because they were trying to win tickets to see Nina Simone in concert. Oh, cool. And so the play was written prior to her death, but it was presented at the Phoenix Theater after I think she had passed. Oh, wow. But my mother and I went, and there were times when I couldn't breathe. We were laughing so hard. That's awesome. But it was great because you got this little, you get these little history tidbits of, about Nina Simone. Absolutely. Interspersed in all of the, what you learn about the culture of Black women. Mm-hmm. So I can't for the life of me remember what the play was called.
Yeah, if you think of it, just post it on the website, and we'll.
I'll have to call up Brian Fonseca and ask him what it was called.
I wonder if I
that sounds amazing. Like it would be really interesting to maybe just to find that script or do like a reading of it with just like a one time, just to kind of see how that all played out. Came together. No, it's really cool you met her nephew, because I was like, I hope I got it all right, because it's been a while since I've seen the documentary, so I was just trying to like refresh my memory about it for this podcast, and I found a couple. I just sent we'll post it on the website, like 10 things about her that Rolling Stone rounded up pretty recently. But yeah, she definitely had some things going on in her life, and again, it's like, is it because of, is it the artist? Like, does the art make people have certain things they do or say, or are they just already that way and that makes them creative? Or she's very interesting person, and it's like she kind of, and it's interesting too because it's one of those things like, did she stumble into certain things? Like she was like, this says she was Malcolm X's neighbor. Like what are the chances of that? Or did she purposefully like want to put herself into, I think she purposefully was there. I don't think it was accidental that she was in the civil rights movement. But
he lived in Harlem.
Okay.
And I would, because he was from New York City, and I'm pretty sure he lived in Harlem. And Harlem was really the heart of everything Black.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah,
especially in the Yankee North.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the one place that was kind of a safe place. or one of the places. I guess it wasn't the only one, but yeah, New York even. I think too people think of the North as like, oh, it's the North. There's no racism there. It's like, oh, let's have a chat about
Not
that.
quite.
Like, let's not quite. It's maybe a little more subtle than in the South, but it's pretty segregated still, and especially then. All right, I don't have anything more to add about her. Like I said, we'll have a couple things on our website. I know I keep mentioning the documentary, but I definitely think it's a really good, like I remember I was so excited when it was available because it was something I'd been like just waiting for those 10 or more years to just get to know more about her, and other than just kind of piecing it all together by just reading a bunch of articles. So yeah, because it's like you see her and it's like I think her family's in it, and they talk a little bit. I think the documentary even had like her family. I'm pretty sure anyway it had her family's blessing. I don't think the biopic did. So I think it's that kind of says something too.
Yeah, I like it when they involve the family and friends and people who actually knew the people they're trying to talk about and,
right,
gather information about.
Right. And she wasn't from, 2000, she passed away in 2003, like you were saying, so it wasn't that long ago that she was around. So a lot of people would still, know her, remember her, and what she was about. But yeah, she's definitely one of my favorites, and there are certain songs of hers, like I hear it and I just start crying. So I can't listen to those songs in the car because I'm
don't do that.
Oh no, this is gonna really upset me. Like I think I even listened. Like I'm trying to think. Like I think I even listened to the CD when I was on my way to take the LSAT, which it's like that's the most random memory I know, but I heard, her singing, and this is going to be even like weirder. I heard her singing "I Got Life" from the Hair soundtrack or whatever that song is called. I think that's what it's called. And I just like, I don't know what it was. It was the stress of, because I had to drive to Bloomington from Indianapolis. I don't know if it was the stress of knowing I was going to take this like huge exam that was going to last all day or what it was. But I just got super emotional at that song. There are other songs too, like "Wild Is the Wind." I know that's another cover she did, but that's one that that gets me every time. So, and again, like the CD, the remix and reimagine is just like, her original stuff is really good, but even like other people's takes on her music, it's also like, because they have such a good source material to work with. It's, I don't know, it's definitely like in probably my top 10 albums.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing her to the table. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and
I have a lot of songs to listen to.
Totally.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, like you
digging into jazz a little bit.
Yeah, like you can go into like her like if you have Pandora or Spotify, there's like obviously it's better to pay for music, but if you want to just kind of get a taste of it, and then there's a lot of there's like a suggested playlist, like on the when she was nominated for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they have like a playlist of
cool,
kind of getting to know her music.
Yeah, definitely.
So, well, if no one has anything else, that wraps it up for this week. So join us next week as our gal pals as another gal pal shares her one cool thing as Black History Month continues on Gal's Guide to the Galaxy podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.